Hey everybody, AJ Maestas here. Nice to have you all join us. I wish I could see you all, which I cannot, but it is what it is. There's just too many of us out there right now. But grateful you could join us. I'm going to have a coworker with me from time to time popping up on video here, Jeff Nelson. He might be to my left or right now. Feel free to introduce yourself if you are, Jeff.
I am. Nice to speak with everyone.
Well, I hope you all know, even though we're consultants and Navigate is sort of this outsider, right, in the industry, my passion is absolutely collegiate athletics. It's the only thing I'm a fan of. I'm a big Huskies fan. My dream job was, and the reason I even work in sports was to be the athletic director at the University of Washington. So don't tell Jen, please. And I respect what you all do. I think it is a beautiful pursuit, and there's so many missions that are being served in collegiate athletics that we are always so grateful to be a part of moving the needle with you on behalf of universities and student athletes and all of the great measures and outcomes that come from the world of amateur athletics. So it's an honor to be here with you all today. And thank you for having us. Again, my name is AJ Maestas. My firm is called Navigate Research, and we do quite a bit of work in the collegiate world. What we're talking here today, and our title is about data identifying trends, but we don't want to avoid the obvious subject of COVID and everything that's taking place with that. So please submit any question you want. This is our agenda. It should be popping up on your screen in a second. You don't have to wait for us to get into one of these sections to ask a question. It actually gives us time to pull that question out for Jeff to find it and ask that to me or to answer it himself. So don't let just the content we've laid out here be our guide. After each of these four sections, from 2 through 5, we're going to stop for a second for Q&A and answer some of those questions. And there's a little chat function. If you find that floating menu bar there with GoToMeeting, you'll find a way to be able to sort of send a message into us or send a question. So pleasure to be with you all today. And I wish I could see you as well. But I will turn off our visual here and get to the PowerPoint, but we'll return on screen again during the Q&A portion. So 4 breaks for Q&A. You see our sections we're going to attack here. And again, the name is AJ Maestas, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you. So quick background on us. I'm up in the upper left there. As I mentioned, a Huskies fan. Jeff there is in the middle. And I think you may have met some or all of these people in our work in the collegiate world if we've had the pleasure and the privilege of working with you directly. These 2 guys down here were great athletes, college basketball. Really cool thing about Jordan is he grew up in Asia, mostly Singapore and Tokyo, but he worked in Hong Kong for a bit before joining Navigate. And Phil O'Feely played football at the Air Force Academy. He covers everything in the East for us. So these are some of the faces you're most likely to see on campus and in the event that we get to spend more time with you after today. We've worked with a broad range of universities that are not all reflected here, but here's an example, a map of some of those we've done some significant work with. Big things like naming rights deals or multimedia rights deals. 4 of the big 5 conferences we've worked with on major strategic initiatives. And plenty of other examples. 2 of my favorites are these transformational moments, not just our normal stuff like multimedia rights or apparel deals, but the whole athletic department, looking at everything from brand to where they're going in their future. We did that over a number of years with the University of Central Florida during a really explosive time for them, and maybe dating back 5-6 years ago until about a year or 2 ago, and the University of Houston over a number of years. So those are examples of ways we've worked with these folks you see on the map right now. So to get to the point of it all, I'm hoping to set the stage by juxtaposing collegiate athletics versus pro sports, because I think there's a number of lessons we can learn as far as best practices that are employed there. And when you think about COVID-19, when you think about budget pressure, when you think about any of these questions, we have to ask ourselves, is this the highest and best use for the money or my time or what we're doing to be a great marketer, a great seller of tickets, a great developer of young people. So using that as a filter, this isn't meant to heap praise onto the professional sports world, but we have the good fortune of working with all the major league offices, all the major networks and broadcasters, 13 of the top 15 agencies, numerous blue chip brands like Toyota and Visa and Pepsi, and you get the gist of it. We get this interesting viewpoint in this sort of, economy that we live inside of, where we get to look at buyers and sellers and learn from all their best practices. Over 1,000 over our 14-year history we've worked with. So again, this isn't to say the pro sports world's better. I just told you I'm a fan of collegiate athletics. It's my passion, and I very much prefer the mission that is served through collegiate athletics. But I do think there's some business lessons we can learn. So to set the stage, if you just concentrate on the colored bars there, it's just showing some metrics that indicate how popular the NCAA is versus professional sports. And as you can see by some measures, it could be the number 2, at worst number 3 sort of sports entity or channel in the United States. But when you look at revenue, we come in last place when you look at the major sports leagues. Again, not trying to throw daggers at collegiate athletics. Much of this is easily explained through amateurism and the missions that we serve and the stakeholders we serve that are far more broad. The pro teams want to win and make money, and you have students, staff, faculty, alumni, fans, state legislators. There are so many factors to consider in what I consider to be far more noble mission. But the reality of it is the entire difference between your popularity, which kind of would linger in this space here, as compared to the reality, isn't fully explained by amateurism. About half of it is. So in our opinion, about half of that delta or difference is things we think we could close the gap on in the not too distant future. What you're seeing here, CAGR, stands for compound annual growth rate. I know it feels like we're growing fast, but others are actually growing faster than us. And 7.2% a year, just a little slower than the NFL has been growing. At that rate, your revenue would double every 10 years. And unfortunately, your costs would follow the same line in theory. But it's a nice rule of thumb, the rule of 72, if anybody's ever heard of it out there. It's a good metric and judge to say, if I were to tell you the average Power 5 conference budget is going to be well over 200 million in 10 years, I think you might, initially sort of roll your eyes and think that's crazy. We've reached the ceiling. We're doing everything we can do. But yet somehow it always does seem to find its way there. In the spirit of giving you some of the interesting high-level answers first, before we get into the meat of the presentation, I'm going to touch on these 8 points, and then we'll pause for the first time to take a few questions. What I'm sharing here, again, isn't meant to be condescending or all-knowing. It's very easy to be the consultant, right, and sort of say, do this. And we have the good fortune, as you saw from our map, of working with dozens and dozens of universities, dealing with the practical reality of what happens on campus. But just to touch on these, and hopefully the information we learned together today will arm you with action to take or practical reality for you and your campus and your university at your given level. Here are the big picture ideas. In the collegiate world, ticket sales, staffing, and investments tend to significantly lag the pro sports world. We spent good time with the Phoenix Suns here, where I'm based in Arizona, just before COVID came down. They have 40 to 50 year-round ticket sales people for just their sport, 41 home games of the NBA, and they add 50 to 60 in the renewal season and off-season. They wouldn't do this if it didn't make them money. And the idea is that there's a net incremental profit to direct ticket sales efforts. Outsourcing's become a popular tactic. I understand why. But to leave this point and move on, the big picture is that one of these 8 ways we see for incredible room and growth is professional grade, commissioned, progressive, outbound ticket sales and service groups. And it's difficult to separate that from CRM practices. Some of the highest return on investment implementations we've seen anywhere in sports and in college is a quality CRM system. That's customer relationship management, or the database in which you use to interact with your customers. Who gets what email when did they hear from you? You get the gist of it. You cannot lose investing in salespeople, and CRM tools is my personal experience. These next 2 here in the middle, creating and owning intellectual property and events, and buying and distributed content. I know there's limitations on rights, and the controller here is no coincidence. It looks like esports. When you think of what we're facing with COVID, there is a need and an opportunity for virtual events and sort of digital content to replace the void of games that have been missed or may be missed in the future. If I could diverge for a second into the pro sports world, the ways that those organizations create great value for their ownership is the appreciation of the asset over time. And that's not real in your world, so you can put that to the side. It is the development of real estate around the critical mass of people that come and go from their stadiums and venues. That is an opportunity for you, although I know it's not easy. And the third is ownership in media rights or content and intellectual property, owning a regional sports network. Again, I know you have television limitations on this, but if you think of what's happening with the disruption of television and a changing media landscape, there's some pretty incredible opportunities to create new content. Picture digital online communities following membership groups, behind the scenes content. You could be your own sort of media sort of producer and distributor. And that has great value in creating and holding on to fans, as well as long-term financial value. Campus-wide partnership speaks for itself. There's something that you're an expert at in commercial, the business of sport and entertainment that your universities are uncomfortable with, whether it's spreading things to the student union building and intramurals or going far deep into the alumni association. There's some pretty incredible opportunities with you and your multimedia rights partner to expand the scope of what you get to work on and the revenue you can drive. I touched on ROI-driven facilities in those three ways that professional sports teams make money, but the truth is that we see a lot of wasteful investments in facilities, stadiums being built too large, not being revenue optimized, often catering to missions related to coaches' desires or recruiting, when there's an opportunity to build sustainable revenue streams. If you look at one of the real successful patterns, for over a decade, we worked with AEG. They own and operate about 180 buildings around the world, sports venues, mostly arenas. Their businesses, the key points of differentiation are great sponsorship sales and naming rights and other deals around those facilities, and developing the real estate around them, bars, restaurants, mixed use, condos. These could even be athlete dorms. It depends on how you view that as revenue driving or offsetting costs that you have, in managing your business. But generally speaking, that critical mass of people that come and grow from your campus for athletic facilities don't see the normal level of service, food, entertainment that holds them there, that reduces the egress and ingress of traffic and some of the other sort of, opportunities that exist with real estate. Premium experiences in hospitality, I'll touch on this in more detail, but we see an incredible opportunity for more premium experiences in hospitality as a percent of your inventory in your facilities, or just unrelated to a specific game. Commercial use of facilities, I understand, is difficult. You have a lot of teams practicing in those venues, but if you look at the pro sports world, they tend to actually make more money, the building owners and operators, off of concerts and other events than they do the pro sports teams' tenants. They're sort of a loss leader to bring the critical mass of people and justify the building. So that opportunity exists for you. There's no question. And I know all the political hurdles to bringing a concert or other things on campus, but it's there, especially if you have truncated or canceled seasons. And I already touched on naming rights when we were talking about ROI-driven facilities, but as a general rule of thumb, donor names are given in perpetuity to fields and stadiums and names. And the rate of appreciation over time for sponsorships is around 6 to 7% a year. So again, the price would double every 10 years. So instead of giving something away in perpetuity, if there's a termination, or if there's a ceiling on that relationship, we would think that opens up the door for commercial rights. As a rule of thumb, we ask our clients to not put a donor name on a building unless their one-time gift is 20 times that of today's annual market value of naming rights. So don't give it away in perpetuity unless it's worth at least 20 times that total gift, 20 times what the annual fee is you could generate today in naming rights. Reason being is that rate of appreciation in sponsorships grows much faster than inflation, and you could find yourself with this sort of albatross of a commitment in a brand or a name on your facility and an incredible 7-figure revenue stream just, sitting by the wayside. So a lot of information really quickly. I promise we'll get into more tactics and more data you can arm yourself specifically with. But if I could pause for a second, I'll put on my camera again. I'd love to hear any questions or thoughts you have before we move on.
And AJ, I'll jump in and I'll take a look at these questions. One thing I wanted to bring up though first, just to put it in the context, of course, of this COVID moment in time. One of the things that we've talked with both pro and college clients about right now is kind of what can I be doing with so many question marks and so much uncertainty. And we think a great exercise is taking some of these areas that appear to be opportunities or trends and basically getting your best and brightest in a room and kind of taking a step back and whiteboarding out, if we were building this athletic department from scratch, what would it look like? Which pieces of what you see on your screen now might we invest in? What sports would we have? I don't want to go so far as to say this is a moment to start slashing sports. That's going to be very, very dependent on individual schools and situations. But knowing that there are going to be some near-term decisions and some painful ones around expenses, rather than just get caught up in that kind of narrow mindset of how do we, if we have 30% of our revenue, for example, not coming in this next year, how do we make up for that on the expense side? That's a painful exercise to go through. I think we encourage everyone to take a step back, and certainly that's part of it, but think about how would we build this from scratch? What would we include? What would we invest in? And then compare that to how you're set up now and start to kind of plot a path from now to that kind of ideal future. And then instead of seeing this COVID moment as only a painful one and a great deterrent to things that maybe you wanted to do, how can it be an accelerant? So just wanted to add that context to this slide, which, this is something we've been talking to clients and friends about even before, obviously, such great uncertainty hit. But now I think that's the context we would put it in. So with that said, one question related to the previous slide, AJ, and I can answer this one, but just wanting to know about those revenue figures, what's actually included in those. So it is basically capturing publicly reported revenue numbers for each of the leagues, and then for NCAA athletics. I think USA Today actually does a fairly extensive database around revenues that they, and then I think we can utilize and aggregate from, but it is meant, to answer the question, to include ticket sales, sponsorships, donations, media rights, everything and anything that you'd be counting in your revenues. Another question, and this one I'll probably put to you first, AJ, and very obviously timely and something we've been talking a lot about, but it's basically around what kind of modeling we've seen or are doing related to the impact of COVID-19 and what could happen with especially football.
Well, there's an article, and you can probably cite these statistics better than me, Jeff. Jeff leads a lot of our really high-end, like the conference level strategy assignments in collegiate athletics. There's no question it's threatening. Insurance policies and things like that have currently mitigated some of the losses, but there's certain scenarios where you could roughly assume dollar for dollar, game for game loss in things like television rights, contracts, or erosions in other areas of our business. So it's pretty intimidating. It's pretty scary. I do think the filter Jeff just used, saying, hey, what if we were to build this from scratch, is a good lens. If you're asking yourself, if you're an athletic director, or you ultimately want to make your athletic director look good and you want this department to survive, it is a really good filter to sort of say, why this investment, and is this critical, to moving us forward in the next year or two? Because there's going to be incredible downward pressure on revenue, even if it's just an economic downturn. But more realistically, missed games are a real possibility. This reminds me, actually, we're going to publish within a week or so. We're going to start publishing an update over time, a predictor of when games will be played without fans in the stands across all the major sports, and then when with fans in the stands again. Looking at other countries, best practices, looking at these trends from COVID-19, trying to get a feel for the uncertainty in which you face and some level of clarity to plan against and predict. But to give you the sobering answer on that, in the pro sports world, where the athlete doesn't earn their millions and the owner doesn't earn their millions, and onward down the line, television broadcasters, the distributors, the cable companies, there's an incentive structure for everyone when you're a for-profit entity to play the games as soon as you can possibly play them with reasonable safety measures. The incentive structure is very different in collegiate athletics. So I'm sorry to be the bearer of a bad or negative prediction, and I hope I'm wrong, but I would consider collegiate athletics the least likely to be playing, whether it's in front of fans or otherwise, and it's a pretty significant risk. Very important revenue seasons like football, I think, are significantly at risk. So again, let us quantify this. We will show the key variables that are driving this prediction, and we'll just get linked in with us on LinkedIn, or feel free to send us an email. But we'll be publishing, for every slide we share here today, there's an army of studies we've done for others, and we can't share it in the amount of time we have left. We're already down to 40 minutes. So get linked in with us, and we'll be publishing some of these insights I'm describing, including these predictors of when games will be played again. I'm sorry, Jeff, I cut you off.
No, I was just going to quickly build on that and say that we've had the privilege of being in the room when presidents are meeting from many different conferences, and in the room, obviously, with athletic directors. And the tenor and tone of those meetings, even about the same subjects, can be so dramatically different. And so now, I think that would definitely be a recommendation, is to be trying to get in lockstep with school presidents and leadership, so that you can help kind of drive that conversation, because, as AJ said, they're going to be probably the most risk-averse decision-making body in the sports world. AJ, two more questions. One is just to go back on that rule of thumb on naming rights, and when, the rule of thumb comparing to giving them away in perpetuity.
20 times, and by the way, I'll end our video here soon so we get back on track, but to be succinct, don't take a one-time donation to name something that could be commercially sold unless that donation is 20 times that of the current annual market price of the sponsorship. So if a arena could be sponsored realistically for $1 million per year commercially, you shouldn't take anything less than a $20 million one-time donation to put a donor's name on it. The truth is, I think the threshold should be higher, but you see far lower thresholds accepted. We think there's 200 buildings in collegiate athletics that could garner more annual revenue, annualized, if you were to pretend that donation was an annuity, if it was commercial versus a donor name. I get it. You're trying to break ground. It's tough. A lot of these restrictions on building need 50% of the dollars or more committed before a shovel, breaks ground. But a big time lost opportunity. I mean, small schools, we're talking 3, 4, 500,000 a year. Big schools, we're talking 1 to 4 million a year, and that's the current market for your premier buildings.
AJ, a couple more that I did want to get to, and then we'll get back in it. But when we're advising clients, areas we consistently recommend they scale back to optimize budgets.
Well, I'd love to hear your answer, because
I feel like most of our conversations are about reallocating budget. So, for example, looking at how do you spend your recruiting dollars right now, and are there more efficient and effective ways to reallocate those dollars? So putting them more into the efforts you have from a social digital perspective, or from a marketing perspective, rather than continuing to invest in the same out-of-home budget that you kind of have forever. Are those dollars really working for you, or should you reallocate them toward some sort of campaign that is much more laser targeted at donors who are going to make a much bigger difference on your bottom line than just kind of that general out-of-home buy? So that would be my answer. I feel like we're almost always talking about reallocating rather than scaling back, but it's a good question, given that there's going to be all that downward pressure you just mentioned.
I mean, sports are going to get cut, right? When the majority of your portfolio of sports lose money, and I know we're not in a not for-profit business, but it's just a practical reality. The last economic downturn, which wasn't near as dramatic as this, so maybe we're out of this quicker than the general public believes today. But if there's a prolonged downturn economically, it would probably be equal or more painful than the last one. There was a couple hundred sports across all of divisions of collegiate athletics that were cut last time. So we're in the business of positive ROI investments. And the way I see collegiate athletics is under investing. When you have 20 plus sports and the staff the size you do and the resources you have, we see these being run threadbare. And our recommendations are 95% plus. There's more money to be spent here, but it drives positive ROI. So it will pay for itself. So the cut question is really hard for me. I'm sorry, I don't mean to dodge it because I'm trying to dodge something negative. But realistically speaking, we play too many sports for the economic model to support. And I like that about collegiate athletics, but that will certainly be one of the consequences. We're going to lose sports, and that's disappointing, very disappointing. I'm going to turn off our camera and get moving, Jeff, unless you think this
I was
is
going to
critical.
say there are a couple others that I'm going to hold on to, but I think we can get to, and maybe we'll get touched on a little bit. So let me also turn off mine.
Well, we'll be quick with this future of television portion because you don't control a lot of what happens to you with television, but you do with video, and the changing landscape creates some pretty incredible opportunities. And the reason I'd say it's important for you is it is increasingly a larger percent of your budget. So affecting your television audience affects what conference you could be a member of, or the revenue that you'll get from your TV deal, or your ability to build your brand. The pathway to fandom still has a great deal of video interaction. It just happens not to be television as much as it used to be in the past. So I'll be quick on this television and video section just to get us on pace. But it is important, even at the individual school level of control. This is a projection. If you look at this sort of maroon colored line going up here, more bidders for television rights means more money. We're about to publish an article with The Athletic in a couple of weeks where we're going to be showing our projections for the next set of television deals, which are going to show college deals growing by 50 to 100% between 2023 and 2027 when all the major deals are coming up. A lot of people thought we'd hit a ceiling, or a tough economy might harm that, or the fragmentation of television viewing audiences with all these over-the-top sort of alternatives might harm that. But our prediction is a pretty strong continued annual rate of growth. So there's one for you, a teaser on this article. It's going to say, now lower division NCAA members being flat or even down in television revenue is not out of the question. That's a little scary, but this is an opportunity for you because you could take back some of the control on these rights. You could do something about it. I know this is too much detail to look at, but if you just kind of squint your eyes, this section on the bottom, media rights and licensing, the majority of that is media rights growth, by the way. Look how it's grown as a share of the total pie. If you, highlighted here, in just a decade, it's gone from 31% to 43% of your average total revenue. Now, this is Power 5 athletic revenue, but you get the picture. Television is increasingly a larger portion of your business. This is true across the world. Within the next decade, it's predicted that every major sport will earn more money from their television rights than any other form or medium. Now, when you think about donations tied to ticket sales in collegiate athletics, you could argue that college will be the last to go through this. But at the end of the day, the point is every day sports becomes more of a video or television product than an in-person product. Could be a good thing in the near term here because we are probably going to be playing without fans even when we do get the chance to play again. This is just showing the messy landscape. Consolidation will take place here with all these OTT solutions and alternatives, but really, really big picture. The question for you is going to be who, where, what, how do I do? And I'm going to try to, how do I do this? And I'm going to try to explain in the next couple of slides very succinctly. But, the world used to look like this, just broadcast. Now there's these intermediaries in the pay TV world, and now they can go direct to consumer. And any form of entertainment that is not sports or appointment-based viewing, you need to assume it's going to be out of a library and on demand. That's basically where things are going. Think like Netflix. So holding this entire ecosystem together right now is sports. The only reason you would pay a cable, for the most part, a cable bill would be sports. actually makes you all more valuable, not less valuable. Who is going to be disrupting this? It's going to take time. We don't picture, Google being seriously in the sports business, tomorrow or even next year. But if you just look at the money they have on their balance sheets, Google by themselves could purchase every pro sports team in the United States if it were hypothetically for sale with cash that they have sitting in the bank. Is that insane or what? They can also buy all of these players. So the moment that Google decides they can't get customers on their own directly with YouTube and YouTube TV or other mediums, and they want to be in the traditional television business, they could snap their fingers and be in that business. So this is meant to be an emphasis on maybe it's not tomorrow, but it's happening quickly. The future is technology, direct delivery to consumers. And that, again, is an opportunity for you to create intellectual property, create a fan following, create a community, something that your university and athletic department owns. This is just a silly little example, but to emphasize the movement, about 4 years ago, we were working on the Cubs TV deal that just got announced last year. And to help ownership come to grips with how much people will stream sports online, again, this is about 3.5, 4 years old, we asked people to predict what the masses think people will be doing. This is a word to the wise for those of you who do research on your customer base to predict the future. People are very bad at predicting their own behavior, but if you give them sort of a form of currency and make them bet on what the masses will do, they're far more accurate at predicting real change. People always say, I'm not influenced by marketing, or I wouldn't do that, but they often do. So anyway, years ago, the majority of people thought 50% or more of sports viewership would be streaming, and the confidence level is what's revealed here on the right. Those who believed it was going to be that way were very confident in their answer. Those who were betting against it were not confident at all. It's just a fun indicator and a little trick, little hack for research to get people to be more accurate in predicting future behavior. Let me pause for 1 second for another break on TV-related questions or anything else that you think is important, Jeff, that you've seen come across the chat box.
Yeah, I think there's a great one here about asking if you have any examples of effective creation and owning IP and events. So wanted to kick that one to you because I know it's an area of passion for you, people taking control of their IP and creating new valuable content to put out in the media rights space.
Well, two really high-level ones. I think the membership model has been done poorly in U.S. sports. There's this club called the Melbourne Cricket Ground, or there's a venue. It's like the hallowed grounds of cricket in Australia. By the way, the country only has 24 million people. We have 329 million people here in the United States. So 1/14 the population of the United States. Stadium holds 100,000 people. It's often got empty seats. That's unrealistic in a 5 million person city of Melbourne with many, many cricket events and many Aussie rules football matches taking place in that venue. But there's a club inside of there that's extremely prestigious. It's the Melbourne Cricket Club. I'm sorry. So it's the Melbourne Cricket Grounds is the venue. Melbourne Cricket Club, the MCC, 280,000 person waiting list. You pay money to be on that waiting list. Using this example, this is more than the Green Bay Packers waiting list. I mean, this is tops in the world. There's so much prestige associated with it. You get a little hard card with your photo on it, like a badge that you would actually carry, almost like a license. You get stickers that you can put on your car and stuff like that. The membership, and it gives you rights to buy tickets before others, and there's a digital community you're a member of. Happy to introduce anybody who wants to meet these people, by the way. We have the good fortune of working with Cricket Australia and the people who operate this building. There is a sentiment, a feeling. The reason people do what they do in marketing is feeling-based. We use facts and figures and all that stuff to justify what we want to do, but it's a feeling. And I think in the collegiate world, we are ahead of the pro sports world in that connectivity and that feeling of a membership, but we don't have a membership model. The NBA, which is usually considered the most progressive league, has 18 of their clubs running a membership model, but there's no more participation than you would expect for the benefits they're being given, whether that's tickets or ticket discounts or food discounts. So I think there's an opportunity, and I think it will come from collegiate athletics for someone to create an incredible model of membership. If you want to look into A's Access, we've done a bunch of research around this. They're a client. They're trying to create this new model. Picture like a subscription-based model. This is the future of buying, by the way. It's not tomorrow, but in a decade, people aren't going to buy season tickets once a year. They'll be a subscriber to a membership model that gives them access to their seats and clubs and what have you. So we're working through the kinks with the A's, but Oregon State and Zach Lasseter did a similar thing there, which I thought was really cool. ton of lessons to be learned from the subscription-based model and creating a digital community. It could be online, it could be app-based. We are living in a mobile-first world, which is the section we're about to go into after this Q&A. So I would say create a virtual community. Let me pause. I went on longer than I promised I would. Jeff, how would you add to that? Because I do think creation of community and intellectual property is an unbelievable opportunity, especially during COVID, because we're all becoming virtual, right?
Yeah, I also think, Michigan State did a good job thinking outside the box for a long time. Events like the aircraft carrier game. I think there's just a lot of availability for creative thinking. If you just stop and decide we're going to do something new this year that we've never done, at the very least. Doesn't have to be something that's never been done, but we always kind of half-jokingly say that in the collegiate space, more often than not, everybody's looking to kind of be second at something, let somebody else try and risk and see if something works or fails. But I think that's an example of taking something as simple as, where do we play our games? Let's do something different that we've never done before. And it was great. And successful.
We are going to publish something. My apologies. We are going to publish something on virtual events on our LinkedIn page. The data we have, we just haven't made it look beautiful yet in an infographic, but they skew high on education, on income. They're directly measurable. You can have a one-to-one relationship with different audiences. Higher end sort of people tend to actually show. So in the event, we're having esports competitions online with your athletes, to draw fan attention or whatever it is that we're doing. Virtual events will come nowhere near replacing the television revenue or ticket revenue of holding what we'll call an old school event now. But there are some pretty serious benefits, and what an opportunity to take risk. Like, I view this whole, I think I might be beating a dead horse with the COVID-19 thing, but what an opportunity to take risk. If you believe what I said earlier, that people make decisions based on feelings, we often neglect our brand building opportunities because we're very transactional. We're rushing to get that game produced. We're rushing to sell those tickets. We're rushing to launch, the next season. And it's an opportunity to sit back, and we're going to share some examples by the end of this presentation where brands have used COVID as an opportunity to connect with their community and build the feeling around their brand as opposed to the facts. But please, Jeff, go ahead and
good question.
I think we're down to 20 minutes here, though.
Yeah, where it ties back a little bit to what we talked about earlier, but when we talk about budget reallocation, where do college sports as a whole, where do they need to spend smarter? So I can quickly, off the top of my, at a high level, I should say, and AJ might touch on this, I think, shortly, but premium seating is one area, investing more in premium seating and the revenue that can come from that space, and just raising ticket prices in that premium seating. As long as you attach appropriate value to what somebody gets, they're not just getting a ticket, they get X, Y, and Z with that ticket. We talked a little bit about, I mentioned recruiting, but I think understanding the motivators and barriers in recruiting, and actually diving into what moves the needle and what doesn't. And I would say that's the same when we talk about donors too. I think there's a lot of kind of haphazard strategy around throwing money at both of those things without truly diving into the psychology of those two things, and that you can spend a lot smarter in both of those areas. And part of recruiting too is understanding with assistant coaches and the salaries that you assign to those positions, which assistant coaches are difference makers in recruiting, who's worth spending on and maybe who's not. AJ, do you want to add to any of those?
Well, I'll just touch on one little one and get moving, because we're down to 20 minutes. But there's a chance to look at your pricing. The secondary market in collegiate athletics football is the largest secondary, ticket market in the entire world. and there's really only 6 or 7 home games. That's not a complement to how we're pricing in the primary market. So when I look at really quick high ROI and allocation of spending, I think about ticket sales, CRM practices. I think about premium seats and experiences, tailgating, some of these things that are, you don't even have to do a build out. There's no capital expenditure. You just throw out a generator, some porta potties, rent spots, and charge a premium for getting these sort of do it yourself, quick turn, sort of tailgate solution. So and although attendance will be challenged as we slowly come out of this pandemic, I think there are some opportunities to look at your pricing. You could even tie it to a donation. You could say, we're trying to support these student athletes and we're asking for this much more in a gift, even if it's not tax deductible, giving them a feeling that they're contributing to a community when they used to maybe get that tailgate spot for simply the cost of parking. But those are quick ideas. I'm going to turn off my camera, Jeff, because I feel like we got to hustle to get through the rest of this. Social, digital, mobile. I'm just going to touch on some really quick tactics because, again, having time sensitivity in mind, what I'm showing you here is we did this really cool Gen Z study. We have a Gen Z expert. She's a junior or heading into her junior year at Princeton, depending on whenever school starts again. And she's the voice of her generation. Ultimately, we do the research. But just to give you a feel for it, if you're not thinking about Gen Z, and there's their birth years, as you see along the bottom.
AJ, let me stop you. I think you're still paused on page 8. There you go.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. Appreciate it. So this is just a snapshot of these generations. There's different sources that'll cite different dates, but this is a rough feel for basically the age of these generations we're talking about. The time is now to understand Gen Z, and they are radically different. They have changed as much as millennials changed from prior generations. So just a snapshot, because if I could give you the high level reason this next section matters, we see the highest opportunity to perform better on less money through social, digital, and mobile. We see the most out-of-date practices related to legacy marketing mediums when they should be social, digital, and mobile. You could just squint and with blurred eyes look at the screen, and what you're seeing on the top here in that green color, that's mobile devices, and then this is the other digital landscape here below. All the trends you're going to see say this. If you'll take my word for it, it became a mobile-first world in 2013. Think about it. In 2013, did your marketing tactics, did your outreach, did your ticket sales, did your donor efforts become mobile-first? Because that's when the world became mobile first. Unbelievable, right? 7 years ago. So, and if you look at the growth rate and the trends, it's not turning around anytime soon, or will it ever? It'll probably be other wearable devices that someday start to eat into that share of mobile devices, being cell phones. So think mobile first. If you remember nothing else from this section, ask yourself when you come out of this and budgets are normal again, is our first point of contact, our first communication, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at this here, we're going younger on the left to older on the right, and we're looking at just behavior and consumption as a share of media time. And so you can see the dramatic move toward apps and web on smartphones and tablets. And it's an even more dramatic full reversal than the 65 plus category, right? So a tendency for a lot of marketers is to be biased. And one of the things that we do is market research at Navigate. And my favorite outcome from market research is just simply listening to the voice of your fan, a representative voice of your fan. So much of the research we do is like known ticket holders database, but we don't do that against a control of demographically people who are not fans, demographically identical people who are not fans to understand what's keeping them from attending or being a fan. Just basic good sampling research gives you an unbiased and representative view of what your fan thinks. As we age, as we become more influential and as a decision maker in the organization, we become more out of touch actually with our next generation of fans. So if you look at this bar chart and just squint and compare it to 65 plus, oof. Now these people are your donors. This is the loud minority that will still pick up the phone and has the ability to call the athletic director. But this is the reality of what you're going to have to do to put butts in seats and capture eyes on video and television in the future. Pretty incredible. If you dive into this little square here that is live or time shifted, it's overwhelmingly time shifted television. On the right, what you're looking at is time spent on linear TV. But if I could have broken this down for you and shown you live TV versus time shifted, as in DVR, oof, live's not happening for anything other than sports with Gen Z. This slide's kind of fun. The hazy bars here, grayed out bars, are millennials, which we often think of as young in the next generation, and the dark bars are Gen Z. And this is going to be their interest in sports and competition. So can you guess what this one on the left is over here? That's a dramatic drop, but it's yet still the most popular in the eyes of Gen Z. Hopefully you guessed the NFL. Now give them time to become fans. They're young, right? There's this curve that grows until you're in your 20s, and then that slowly declines over time as far as the fandom curve, but it starts earlier than most people expect. If you're thinking, how do I win the next generation of fans? Believe it or not, it's 6, 7, 8 years old when the initial connection tends to take place, much younger than a lot of other publicly cited stuff out there. So what else is on this list, and where are you all? There's the NBA. Give them time. We think they're going to become big NBA fans as they age. There's the rest of us, and a couple of highlights that call out collegiate football and basketball. So you're doing pretty good relative to other sports, but it's not a very good story relative to the prior generation. Look at the drop in the dark bar versus that grayed out bar. Pretty crazy. And can you guess what's up here? We threw some red herrings and other stuff in here, but just for fun. And this isn't even the genre overall. This is just one game. How about that? Fortnite. Disturbing. Gen Z likes Fortnite more than everything but the NFL in sport and competition and entertainment. If I could give you a highlight, and I think I'll ask Jeff to speak to this, this Gen Z study we did with this young lady, again, is the face of the study, but ultimately our Allie and Kelly and our team execute the research. What destination is the next generation going to? This is Gen Z information. First place is TikTok. First app, destination app, that is, that someone heads to. And then on down the line with Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and ultimately the last one is YouTube. But Jeff, do you mind helping those who are marketers or sellers understand when to use what?
Yeah, the other aspect of this, and we've kind of built out a whole best practices deck related to social, digital content strategy, but most common mistake we see is one piece of content that you create and then you kind of push it out across basically every channel, often at least across Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook in the exact same way. And the truth is that there is such a thing as too much content that you put out if it's not high quality and if it's not tailored to the platform. We see engagement rates decline with some clients when they're putting out too much across all of the same channels. So one thing I'd like you to take away from this is when it comes to each of these, with Instagram, however much video you're putting on Instagram, it's probably not enough, and it should be fun, entertaining video. TikTok, however much you're posting on there right now, definitely not enough. And I know I just said that you can post too much, but we're just not seeing anybody do enough video on Instagram or enough content in general on TikTok yet in your space. But every time there's some sort of trend, dance or challenge or whatever it is on TikTok, great space to have fun and reach that youngest generation. And then Twitter is a place where you can really have a personality. You have to sit and decide what that personality should be for your athletic department, but it's a place that your university handle can actually kind of take on a persona of who you are and what you want to be. And it's a great place to also interact with your fans, to respond to them, reply, even if your more influential fans are the ones that originate, a tweet and you reply to it, hopefully in a fun and engaging way. It's where you can really start to take on that personality. And then if I skip ahead, Facebook really is replacing kind of the team website as where people go for kind of the straight news. I don't think you need to post a whole heck of a lot more on Facebook than kind of your news. You might promote some of these other channels, but if you just dump everything in Facebook, it starts to kind of lose its effectiveness. And then of course YouTube is video, but because of the time differences, something short form is where you're putting the Instagram video, or TikTok. Facebook is where you can go a lot deeper.
Okay, thank you. By the way, TikTok is the #1 destination app for Gen Z. They're almost spending an hour a day on there. If you can't believe that, I'm sure you just learned about TikTok in the last month or two if you don't have kids of that age. Unbelievable stuff. So last slide here, and any relevant questions, maybe only the most relevant question if you want to pull it out, Jeff, given our time constraint. But what we're looking at here is the efficiency on the x-axis as measured by cost per thousand to reach an audience, and effectiveness as measured by lift and purchase attempt up here on the y-axis. And what we're looking at is all the major ways to be a marketer, to reach people, to buy advertising, et cetera. And the story from this is sports is very expensive, but justifiably so because it's so influential. And this thing that's way off the chart up here is social media. So I know we all have all heard it plenty over the last decade, but there is no more efficient or effective marketing medium right now. And especially when you look at cost. It's trusted, it's considered authentic, it's your fans speaking to you. We know it can get ugly, and there's obviously these horrible people out there, right, commenting on things, but it's an unbelievable opportunity. And if you believe what I've said throughout this section, that it's a mobile first world, and you look at the share of time on these devices that go to social media, it's a can't miss as far as a shift or allocation of where budget, resources, and time should be going. Jeff, I'll turn my camera back on in case there's a great question out there, but
yeah, there are a couple I think we can cover in these last 9 minutes. One, well, it ties into actually what we're looking at a little bit now. You see the partnerships being so effective, although also so expensive. But just a question around what we expect with multimedia rights partners if and when there are less losses in games in the fall.
Right. This is we've worked on a lot of multimedia rights deals. Believe it or not, there's this force majeure clause in your multimedia rights agreements that give relief to the Learfields, IMG colleges, JMIs of the world if games are missed. And so even though it feels like we did something safe by outsourcing our multimedia rights and we get that guarantee every year, they have a legal right to come back to you for relief. And that's unfortunate. That opens up the chance to renegotiate those deals, revisit. But unfortunately, much like missed games on television, it's going to cost us. It's going to cost our athletic departments. And there should be some pretty serious downward pressure on sponsorship revenue. It's unfortunate. Boy, we need more positive subjects on here.
I don't know if this qualifies as positive, but it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to move forward, but please hit me with it if it's positive.
Well, no, I don't know if it qualifies, but it ties a little bit. A few questions about NIL. And so do we think it'll increase or decrease revenue generation for universities, and kind of how that revenue is going to be shared, if it will be shared? So I can take a first stab at that. We've been looking at what we think the realistic values are there. And if you look at the values and you compare them to what the multimedia rights revenue currently is for a Learfield and IMG or the schools that do it in-house, we don't see a huge threat from a cannibalization perspective. Maybe you'll have a few brands that'll put dollars toward an individual student athlete as opposed to what they would have previously put into a sponsorship, but we don't think it's going to be a huge hit. As far as the revenue share, I think we're following proposed legislation and NCAA policies along with all of you. Certainly in the pro space, the teams don't really benefit from player endorsements unless the brand is dead set on not just being able to use the player's name, image, and likeness, but wants the marks and logos of the team too, right? So they have to have a deal with both. Certainly, I would hope that universities can capitalize on that to some extent, that you don't just want Tua by himself in his regular clothes or some generic jersey. You want him in Alabama, gear. So if that's the case, I think it could help. But I know for us, it's really the big question mark is how this all comes to fruition. So I apologize if that's not an answer, at least for me. But AJ, do you have any thoughts on kind of the impact of NIL and whether the athletic departments or how they position themselves to leverage it?
We just put out an article on Athletic Director U and quantifying compared to the pro world. The rule of thumb is it's about 10x for the pro athlete versus a collegiate athlete. What we'll see based on rules, feasibility, it's still to be determined. But there's some good metrics in there if you want to guess. We don't believe it will cannibalize your multimedia rights partners that much. It'll be a low double-digit or single-digit % cannibalization of those other revenue streams. But it is something to think about. It's also an opportunity to use athletes in marketing, though. It's unfortunate we'll have to cut this short because we're down to 5 minutes, but I think this video really speaks to it. I think you'll enjoy this. Imagine if you could use your athletes in this way. The Seattle Sounders have been a client of ours for many, many years. We're very proud of their work. And this was the most successful ticket campaign I've ever seen. I'll give you the stats in a second, but if you'll listen in and watch. Oops. I thought I was going to play it.
Hey there. Have you been waiting long? I hope not. You look really sporty tonight. New haircut? No? Yeah, me neither. Anyway, I asked you here for a reason. I think our relationship has been going really well so far, but I have to ask you an important question. Will you renew your season tickets?
If you look, all the options are positive.
Take your time.
It went viral. People forwarded it to their friends. They renewed 85% plus of their tickets with this one video campaign. No ticket sales, no calling effort, no mail. Pretty incredible, right?
Look, I know I've been gone for a little while. I hope you understand. I know when I left, it hurt you, even though I'm pretty sure it hurt me a little bit more. But I'm back now. Yes, I'd love some more Gatorade. Now that I'm planning on being back in your life, I was wondering if you wanted to upgrade your seats.
Pretty good stuff, right? One of the beauties of name, image, and likeness is you may have the rights to use athletes now in commercial messages. And this program, if you can imagine, they have about 40,000 people in an average game. Imagine the cost efficiencies. It was about $15,000 to produce that video. Well worth the money, no question. Ad agencies are so eager to do work for sports teams, right? That is not the market rate to get a video like that produced. That was just an agency trying to prove themselves. I'm going to hit on these really quickly and hopefully take a positive bent to the end of this ticketing and marketing section. What this is showing is fan satisfaction correlated with winning. And although NCAA basketball and football are there on the most tied to performance outcomes, MLS is a good example where it's possible to decouple yourself. This is not just correlated with number of games, by the way. Mostly it looks like that, but there are exceptions. And that's to speak to an idea that, and remember, if you get linked in with us and ask us a question, other people will have that question, so we'll answer it for the larger audience and dive deeper on any one of these slides. But we see a number of ways to decouple your fan satisfaction from on-field performance. And that is in our control, and we should work on what's in our control, right? This slide was meant to emphasize premium seats. Just some quick statistics. 4% of seats in the pro sports world account for 50% of ticket revenue. The average high-low price point can be 20x different, as in the most expensive ticket can be 20 times the price of the cheapest ticket. And there's usually 18 to 20 different price breaks in the pro sports world. In the collegiate world, there's about a third to a fourth as many of those as far as range of pricing and price point options. All of those, we believe, are indicators for little wins here and there by efficiently pricing the market. If you recall, I earlier said that college football is the #1 secondary ticket marketplace in the world. That is not a compliment to how we're pricing in the primary market on the front end. There's a lot of room for more accurate pricing, which is pure profit that walks out the door when we don't price correctly. This slide is meant to emphasize some of the best practices in fan experience. There's very affordable things you can do. The Disney Institute has some great practices. Most of these low-wage hourly workers that are interacting with your fans don't do that job for the money. They do that to be a part of a team. If their paycheck can come from, the team name, if they can have a pizza party with the coach that educates them on the season and their plans for the season, they come out sharing these things with fans. You can push them into a habit of saying, thank you, goodbye, we look forward to seeing you next week, versus so-and-so. All of these things are motivated not by actually paying them more money. This slide right here is about venue factors and stated versus actual fan experience. What I'm highlighting here with this red sort of circle is indicating that people's stated preferences are actually the opposite end of the scale of what is actually correlated with fan satisfaction. It's one of those warnings that you can't launch one of these surveys that sort of says, you know, what do you want or how do you like X, Y, and Z. There's little tricks you do to remove people's sort of bias, but how incredible is this flip-flop example that I'm using here on what people care about versus what they say they care about in game day experience. And again, feel free to send any of us an email. We want to be helpful. You can contact us. We will give you the best that we have for free to help us. It's a challenging time. Two more things, if I can run over by a minute. It is impossible to shift your marketing efforts and your team to reflect the mobile and digital reality that we live in. One of the tactics that the entire National Rugby League in Australia uses, and this is the New Jersey Devils using it, is they throw that same kind of pizza party with their fans. They give a jersey, they give some real estate that's in a really unattractive place in the stadium for their fans on game day, and they create like a fan support club of 20, 40 people that are combing social, digital, mobile. In your case, you know, it's these message boards where things can get out of hand. And they are bringing real information and positive information, and they're helping that virtual water cooler share the real mission and direction of the university. We haven't seen a single team do anything less than double their social media following by deploying this for free fan army, you know, support group. These other examples are related to loyalty, but what I wanted to leave you with was a video. We're so proud of our client in Anheuser-Busch and how they reacted. This video came out over 2 weeks ago, actually. Related to COVID. And I earlier mentioned what an opportunity for us to like build our brand, to build community, and to do so in a way that we'll later benefit from, but in this moment, in this time, to be supportive. So again, over 2 weeks ago, they rolled this out. They got all their corporate partners to, most of their corporate partners to help with their venues, but I'll let the video do its talking. And this will be my conclusion of me talking. Please know that we want to help. There's, again, research behind every slide. Let us be helpful to you. Friends fly free on the small stuff. And please enjoy this COVID response video.
This bud's for the Blues, the Reds, and the Warriors. This bud's for the Magic, the Athletics, the Giants, and the Jazz. This bud's for the Trailblazers, the Braves, the Yankees, and the Angels. This bud's for the home team.
Wishing you all the best of luck. This is a pretty crazy time. If we can be helpful to you and your athletes and your university, call or write, and good luck. Thank you for sharing an hour of your day with us. And goodbye, everybody.